places there about Eliyahu Navi's encounter with Rabbi Barabu. So Taisa brings a fascinating discussion whether Eliyahu and Pinchas were one and the same, and he brings all the different midrashim that they were not. In fact, he was not Eliyahu. He was from Binyamin, or he's from God. So Taisa brings a fascinating medrash where he saved the life of the son of the Tzarfis, and there's another Taisa asking how can he, if he was a kohen, how can he touch the dead boy? But that's a separate Taisa, separate discussion, and maybe he touched on that. But what do you call it? So Taisa brings a medrash that when he tried to save the Ben Tzarfis, they sort of said to him, you're a kohen. What are you doing? And the fact that you said to the mother also, you said that you give me some food first of challah, and then you take yourself. So it sounds like that you were a kohen. If you're a kohen, because you're taking challah, how in the world can you go ahead and save his kid's life? So he answered the following, the fascinating Taisus. Taisus that he answered, he says, no, I'm not a kohen, but this child is going to be Mashiach ben Yosef. There's an opinion that this child was Yoina Hanavi, Yoina ben Amitai. But Taisus brings the matter that this child that I'm going to save is Mashiach ben Yosef. And I wanted to hint to them that I am Eliyahu Hanavi, and I always have to be present and make an appearance before Mashiach comes. And that's why I told her to give me that food over there, challah, first, because to tell them that Eliyahu has to come before her son, Mashiach ben Yosef. Interesting. Anyway, the Gemara over here, we're continuing the laws over here, what you're permitted to take. So the last thing we're learning is what Shmuel said, that when it comes to taking a mashkin, comes to taking security, you yourself cannot take it from the house at all, nor can you even seize it from the person in the street, but rather, if everybody can mute themselves, please. But the Shliach Bezin has the right to seize this mashkin, this security, but only in the street, not in the house. If you actually seized, if the Malva went ahead into the house and seized it, so that's a whole discussion we had in the Gemara Tmura, between Abaye and Rava. If you did something that you were not meant to do, the Torah says don't do something, and you did it, if you did it, mahani or mahani, does it help or doesn't it help? But interesting when you see it sounds in Shulchan Aruch and so on, it seems you have to give it back. But the Sameh learns that no, once you took it, you can act, we'll soon a little bit later in the Gemara. Once you took it, you can actually keep it, and you just have to give it back the times that this poor person needs it. But let's continue. So we said you're not allowed to seize. However, there are exceptions. Talk about what we learned. You should not enter the person's house, the borrower's house, to go ahead and seize your mashkin, your litzrobidashin. The house of the borrower, you can't take it. But you can go to the house of the guarantor. There are generally two kinds of guarantors. One is just an Arav, one is an Arav Kabbalah. An Arav is, I'm a guarantor. If that guy cannot pay, then you come to me. So then I'm not a borrower, I'm just a guarantor. So the laws that apply to a borrower do not apply to this kind of a guarantor. And you can therefore go into his house and forcibly take whatever you want. However, there's another kind of an Arav called an Arav Kabbalah. Arav Kabbalah says, it's as if you lent me the money, which means that the lender has a choice, that he can even go first to the guarantor before he goes to the borrower to see whether the borrower can pay. In that case, the Arav Kabbalah is treated just like a borrower, and since you cannot walk into the borrower's house and take things, nor can you walk into the house of the guarantor. But we're talking about an ordinary guarantor here. You cannot walk into his house because, but a guarantor you could, and because he's different than a borrower. In Shulchan Aruch, there's a machlekes, the Bes Yosef and the Ramah. What about all the other dinim that apply? For example, oichel nefesh. You cannot take products that are there to help the person for parnasa. What about to a guarantor? Can you go and take things that oichel nefesh, like the millstone and all that? So the big machlekes, one opinion says that since he's not the borrower, none of the dinim of a borrower apply. Others say no, the only din that doesn't apply is about entering the house. But all the other dinim apply just as well. So now the Gemara says, because we actually have a pasuk. It says a pasuk, Lochach bigdoi, He took his beged, took his dress or his beged. Ki orev zor, because this person, ki orev zor, this person decided to be a guarantor, and he guaranteed a strange person. And then there's another pasuk there where it says, "B'ni, my son, if you went ahead and you guaranteed your friend, you stretched out to this strange person your arm, your hand. That's case number one, that you committed yourself to pay. Or you stumbled with words that came out of your mouth. You embarrassed somebody. You cheated them. You were kept trapped by the words that came out of your mouth. You said the wrong things. So this is what I suggest you do. This is what I suggest you should do. Be not so you'll be rescued. Number one, regarding the loan, you became a guarantor. There's no choice. There's no alternative. That if you went ahead and you did this thing here, you stretch out your hand, is leich and he's srapes. What you have to then do is go out there and be misrapes, which means you have to, in a way, humiliate yourself and take care of it. The Gemara will say maybe what that means. And bend down to your friend. So this is what we dash. If the first example, which is you became a guarantor, then head to like pieces you had, open up your hand and pay him out. The im lav, and if not, harba olav red. If not, you don't have the money, whatever it is, ask your friends to go and talk to him and appease him. The tzacheni, the besa I ata niflis. Sorry. The second problem we had, is where you humiliated him, you degraded him, and so on. You cheated him. Get your friends to go and ask this person to be mochli. So, so these are the two. What do we see clear from here? An orev is very different than a borrower, and there's no alternative but to pay out. So therefore, the dinim of a borrower do not apply to an orev. Then the Gemara continues. We darshal the base another exclusion. I'll go into his house if he's a borrower. If the person has to pay you a wage because you carried his belongings or you led his donkey and he owes you a wage is not considered a loan, and therefore you can walk into his house and take whatever it is. Let's say you're running his hotel, he owes you for that. You rented him a room, or you're an artist and you're supposed to paint his walls with some kinds of different colors and whatever you name. In all of these cases, it's not a loan, and therefore you can go into his house and see whatever you want. I feel what happens? He says, okay, you know what? You don't have to pay me straight away. You can pay me in a month. The moment you say that, you don't have to pay me straight away. You can pay me in a month. What you're really saying is, it's a loan and you owe me money. It's a debt. The moment you transform it into a debt, then all the other laws apply. Then you cannot go to any kind of a loan. If it turns into a loan, you can no longer walk into his house. By the way, all of this is said when we say all of this, it's talking about that you can't walk into his house. We're talking about when it comes time of payment, and the guy doesn't have what to pay, so you take a mashkin then as security. Or Shulchan says even before the payment, but I'm not taking the money. I'm not getting paid now. I'm not taking this as a payout. Then of course I can keep it. We're talking about I'm taking it as a security that I'll eventually get paid. But if it's a mashkin at the time of the loan, you want to entice me to lend you the money, and you want to give me confidence that I'll get paid. So you offer up a mashkin, then most Rishonim hold that in that case none of these dim apply. You can take oichel nefesh from them. You can take whatever you want, except the Rambam. The Rambam holds even initially, even though he's voluntarily giving you the mashkin, it's not really voluntarily. He needs the loan, but the only way he can get the loan from you is by giving you the security. So there are still laws in place, and if you take the mashkin that he needs, let's say a cushion that he needs at night, you need to return it to him at night. Then another thing is, this is all talking about if you're taking this pledge as security. But if you're taking this because as a form of payment, then there are no laws. You can take whatever you want. You need to get paid. Even though it's oichel nefesh, you can take it as a form of payment. And in fact, Shulchan goes further. We had exubas that pay there, that when it comes to mitzvahs aseh and the guy refuses to do the mitzvah, you can beat him to a pulp. So if this guy has the means, or you think he has the means, and just doesn't want to pay, then you have every right, not only the shlich bezin, but even you makin oisei ache teitze nafshe. You can beat him till he pays you. That's the halacha in Shulchan. But here we're not talking about payment, we're talking about here purely as security that one day he will pay you out. Okay, Mishnah. Almana, the Torah has a separate law where it says when it comes to a widow, you should not go ahead and take from her garments, because as we'll see in a minute, Almana ben she aniya, whether the woman is poor, ben shehi ashira, whether she's rich, aim mashkin, so you do not take from her security. It says leisachbel beged almana, you should not take the garments of a woman as security. Machlek is a shaynim if it's limited only to garments, or basically any kind of a mashkin. Says the Gemara. That doesn't mean that the only Avera you did Lesachno. If you walk into her house, and in addition to the Avera of generally of you're not allowed to take you're not allowed to go to the house and take a mashkin, this is an additional lav you have specifically for an almana. And in fact, the Rishonim asked that this is clearly not like Shmuel, but the mashkin means you're walking into the house. It sounds like to me the only house you're not allowed to enter is an almana, but everybody else's house you could. And Shmuel said that you can never enter everybody's house. In fact, Bezna also could never enter somebody's house. So what does it mean over here? So again, somebody trying to say we're just talking about there's an additional love. Of course, you have the Avera of walking into the house, but we're just talking about focusing on this additional love about an almana. Second one, turn around and learn. Well, and this following Gemara we'll talk more about when we get to Sanhedrin.
Taking a security. What's the point of having a security if you can't take it back?
You can't. What do you mean? You could. You're giving it back to her every night. What do you mean? You cannot take a garment of her security. You can take other things, maybe. As I told you, it's an argument, only a garment, but you cannot take a garment. Something very personal for her. Things that you don't have to give back, not oichel nefesh and everything else, that maybe you could take from her. We're talking about things that you have to.
What's confusing me is the wording of the Mishnah. It says "Ein mamashkin ota," right?
Yeah.
It doesn't actually say anything specific.
So this, and we'll see in a minute, there's an argument in the Gemara. Basically, if we're talking about everything or just things that you have to return all the time. Says the Gemara. Come and learn. Almana, a widow, ben shia, whether poor or rich, ain't the mashkin. So you never take from her. In other words, a rich woman, even if you take a garment, you're not going to return it to her, and yet you're not allowed to take it as a mashkin. So it sounds like you cannot take any mashkin, and the garment might be just an example. Rav Shimon says no, as we'll see in a minute. Rav Shimon says the main reason is that if you're going to have to return to her every night, then rumors or tongues will start wagging. What are you doing every night in this woman's house? They'll start saying that you're having some kind of a relationship. Or the Rambam says in Pirush Nais, not that people are going to say, but your taka will have some kind of relationship because you're going to this woman every night. There's an argument in the Poskim whether this only applies to a widow or applies also to a grusha, a divorcee, or a single woman, or an almana is just illustrating this point, or is it specifically almana? But the Gemara continues. Rav Shimon says, Ashira, a wealthy woman, and mashkin nesa. Why? Ani a mashkin nesa. What's the difference? When it comes to a poor person, you have to return it to your house. You are going to cast aspersions on her. So therefore, it does not apply to a shira. So it's only talking about what kind of a mashkin that you need to return to her, something that she needs. And that's the view of Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon, remember, Rav Yehuda loy dodish time with the krah, but Rav Shimon dodish time with the krah. Rav Shimon believes that when we have the Torah gives us a rule, we try to analyze and work out what the basis for that rule is, and based on that logic, we will actually make all kinds of halachas. Like over here, the Torah is an open-ended statement, right? The Torah doesn't qualify what kind of a almana she is, and Rav Shimon says, no, it's only limited to poor people. I mean, if you think about it, it's an amazing thing that you decided, the reason of the Torah, and then based on that, you modify the halacha. Anyways, a long time safer in that. Talk about another time. The Gemara says, so here Rav Shimon seems to darshan time of crow. We actually learned somewhere else exactly the opposite. The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, it talks about a king is not allowed to have too many wives. So we learned after David Melech 6, and then we learned that you can have a total of 18 wives. So Layar Belanoshim means he shouldn't have more than 18 wives, or a king shouldn't have more than 18 wives. We had the Yivamas there, 4, and as long as you can have the Eina and so on. So Layar Belanoshim. Rabbi Yehuda says, but the pasuk says you shouldn't have, a king should not have too many wives, and then the pasuk says they shouldn't in any way cause them to go astray, to go astray. So the question is this like two different halachas or one halacha? So you can read it two ways. One way is don't have too many wives because having too many wives will lead you astray. If that's one way of learning pshat. So then the pshat is only women that would lead you astray. But if the women that's at Konius, then you can have as many as you want. Or there's two Taveras. One is don't have too many wives, more than 18. And another one is you shouldn't even marry one wife who might lead you astray. So it says as follows. You shouldn't have too many wives. Yehuda says, Marbu, you can have as many as you want. In other words, if they're maces liba, you can only have 18. But if they're not, since the Torah says the whole problem is because you go astray, but if in a woman that's not going to lead you to go astray, no problem. You're as many as you want. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda is dashing time with the crop. Rabbi Shimon said, what are you talking about? The Torah gives an absolute rule, you cannot have more than 18. So what does it mean when it says they shouldn't lead you astray? It doesn't matter what kind of woman. 18 is a maximum. But Rabbi Shimon said, we don't dash time to crow. So you take Xeris Akasa the way it is. But when the Torah says, well, we're talking about if this particular woman leads you astray, that even one woman, this woman you shouldn't marry. Even this woman is a tzaddikus, like Abigail, who later married David HaMelech. Nevertheless, more than 18 you cannot have. So we see clearly from it all the way around. Rabbi Shimon is the one who does not darshan. He takes the pasuk literally. It's Rabbi Yehuda darshans the reason and says, well, if the problem is leading astray, then you can have as many as you want. And lo yarba lo nashim is only referring to those women that will cause you issues. Talking about Olayim, no. Rabbi Yehuda lo darish time akra. Rabbi Yehuda does not believe on our own darshaning the time of the pasuk. The shiny hocha, and here's different. Why is it here different? The mefarish kra. The Torah clearly says, lo yarba lo nashim. The Torah says you shouldn't have too many wives, and then it says v'lo yasser. The Torah is giving you a reason. Why shouldn't you have too many wives? Because lo yasser. So it sounds like if these are women that will not be mace to you, they're good women, they're righteous women. You can have as many as you want. My time lo yasser should lo yasser. The Torah says so. It's not we're making. No, you said we have a problem making up our own reason and then modifying the halacha accordingly. The Torah is the one who gave you the reason there. No, so Rabbi Shimon surely should then hold you follow time in the cross. Rabbi Shimon says no. Mechi, Malma, I always darshan on our own without the Torah telling us the reason. We figure out the reason and then we base the halach on that. So why did the Torah have to add lo yosef to sleep? But we would have figured that out on our own. Why you shouldn't have too many wives? We don't need lo yosef. If I know you're dying, I would know. My time in lo yabba. Why shouldn't the king have more than 18 wives? Shouldn't lo yosef? I would figure that on my own. So lo yosef because why did the Torah have to add that? To tell you another halacha. Even one woman, if she will in any way lead him astray, you shouldn't marry him. But generally speaking, if Shimon holds you darshan time in the crow. Says the Mishnah, the Torah has another law that says you should not seize rechaim. You should not seize rechaim or rechav. Rechav means a rider, so the stone, it's a millstone. It's a mill, so you have a millstone on top and a millstone on the bottom. Rechev, the millstone on top is called a rechev because it's a rider, and the bottom one is called a rechai. So now we know we're talking now about a mill that is portable, because if it's fixed in the ground, that's karka, and you cannot take karka as a mashkin. So obviously we're talking about something that's portable. So somebody took this as a mashkin. You committed an avera. You committed an avera. The Torah says lo yachba. You shouldn't take it. But the pasuk says like this. The pasuk says you should not take as a mashkin a rechaim v'rechav, and then the pasuk concludes ki nefeshu chayvul, because you are basically stealing this person's livelihood, or this person's life. So the Mishnah says as follows: you're chayiv, you did an avera, and the chayiv mishum shnei kelim. If you took the entire portable mill, so you have the top and the bottom, you actually committed two averas, because the Torah spells out shenemar leyachbo rei chayiv v'rechav. You chayiv these two averas, because even though you're doing it in unison, you're doing one puller, and as the Rishonim say, you point out you're getting one warning. But still, the Torah, because the Torah separates them as two different items, you committed two sins.
What is the word chovel here? I mean, I always thought the word chovel means to injure yourself or to wound.
Yeah, but not here, not in this case.
How does it work here?
Here it means taking a mashkin by force, usually. Taking a mashkin is and that's why chayvel is hurting, inflicting a wound or someone, which is again like by force. Any product that produces food for this person, you're not allowed to see. Remember, it says ki nefesh chayvel. What's the problem? The Torah gives us a reason. Why can't you take this mill? Because you use that to crush your wheat to make bread. So anything else that directly involves producing food for yourself, you're not allowed to take. How far we go, we'll see in a minute. Abuna said, again, most of Shayim hold is only talking about taking security at the time of payment in lieu of payment, or you can't pay, so therefore you want security. But if it's the initial loan and the guy gives these things to you, then you can keep it, you don't have to give it back. And others, Rambam disagrees. Abuna said, Choval Rechaim, Abuna said the following. Choval Rechaim Leikestein, you get 2 malchus. You get one for Rechaim. You only did the chaim. You only took the bottom stone. You still get 2 malchus. Why 2? One for the stone on the bottom, and the 2 mishum ki nefesh uchayvo. Because the Torah then says, don't do light. We read it as if it says, omit the words rechaim v'rechaim, as if it says, loy yachbol, do not go take a mashkin ki nefesh uchayvo. So there's loy yachbol ki nefesh is 1 lav, the rechaim is a second, and the rechem is a third. That's how he reads it. The Chaim Berech, he did both like a sholish. You took the Rechaim Berech, because he took his life. Rabbi Yehuda says, Hevel Rechaim like achas. Chaval Rechaim like achas. You only get 1. There's no such thing kinefeshu oichel, kinefeshu chayvel. Berechev like achas. Rechaim Berech like a stein. What about kinefeshu chayvel? What about that? He says. The shard dvarim udosi. Nefesh oichel is not going back on rechav v'rechaim. Ki nefesh oichel is saying, and therefore the same thing would apply to any other thing that we use to produce food. It is forbidden. Anything else used is forbidden. So that's what nefesh oichel is. So lema. So what exactly the crux of their argument? So the Gemara is going to think right now that the crux of the argument is an argument that we have between a Abaye Rava and a general argument. A lav shebechlos. So you have a specific lav, and you get 39 lashes if you in any way breach that. But a lav shebechlos means you have one lav that encompasses a number of averis. Do you still get malchus, or that's more than just a warning and not really a specific malchus? Even though we learned in Krisis above all about lav shebechlos, and everyone agrees a lav shebechlos you don't get malchus. But over there, it's talking about where it talks about chaylev there. You have fats, but there's a chaylev of this kind of animal, chaylev of that animal, and different kind. It's all the same avera, and it has the same name, in fact. And we have the one general lav, then you have the specific. So we say a lav shebechlolos, you don't get malchus on that. Here, it's different thing. This is a rechem, this is a rechaim. So, or any other tools that the person uses. Every tool is a different avera. You get malchus. So lema. Abaye v'Rava is the pluk to Rav Huna. Rav Huna says you get 3 malchus, including this general malchus, kinefesh shuchayvel, and Rav Huna says you don't. And that seems to be the very same argument of Abaye v'Rava. Where do we find this argument of Abaye v'Rava? Rava says, talk about korban pesach. Korban pesach has to be eaten only when it's roasted. So the pasuk says, al toichlu mimenu. You should not eat if it's semi-raw. Or mevushal or bashal mevushal, or if it's cooked, so it's an avera, then it says kiyim tzli h. You should only eat it roasted. Again, remove the words no ubashal mevushal and take the word al toichlu. Do not eat kiyim tzli h, as if that's also a lav. It's not just an assay, as if it's a lav. Do not eat it only roasted like a lav. So now the question is, if you ate it, how many averas did you do? Because the im tzli h goes back to the 2, not nevushal, but roasted. So is this a generic lav? Tzli eish, so don't eat but tzli eish. Is that a generic lav which goes on both no and nevushal, therefore you won't get malchus on it? Or is it a separate lav altogether? Or it's a lav shechol, you do get malchus. So here we have a Abaye Rava. Someone always said, no, you ate it when semi-raw, like you get malchus. How many? Shtayim, 2. Why 2? 1 for no and 1 for ki'im tzli eish. What about what about mevushal? It was cooked. You ate the korban cooked. Like a stein, you also get 2. Mishum mevushal because it was cooked. Or mishum ki'im tzli. So ki'im tzli is going back to no and to mevushal. That's like a lav shebechlolos. Like one lav that includes more than one avera. And if you ate na and mavushal, like a shalosh three. That's Rabba's view. The Rabba holds you get like a lav shebeflalos, you still get malchus, which sounds just like Rav Huna. Abaye says, "Ain loikin a lav shebeflalos." Abaye says you don't get malchus on a lav shebeflalos. Sounds like he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, so you don't get malchus on tzliach, nor do you get malchus on kinefesh uchav. Says the Gemara. Abaye Amar Lema Abaye Dama Rav Yehuda, and Rabba Dama Rav Huna. That's what it seems. Amalach Rabba says no. Our machlekes has nothing to do with the argument of Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. I can hold that to Rav Yehuda. I who say over here you'll get malchus for tzliach can agree with Rav Yehuda. You don't get malchus. Why not? Ad kan because you know what Rav Yehuda says over there that you don't get malchus for by nefesh. He says that nefesh and that the nefesh was not referring back to the mill, is talking about all other products. It's referring to anything else, like we had before, plow sharing or other things. That's the same thing. You're not allowed to take it away. Over here, he im the words kim tzliach. What else is it coming to teach us other than you're not allowed to have it cooked or partially raw? So it proves from here that it's merely a lav. So in other words, Rabbi Yehuda has nothing to do with lav shebachlolos. His issue is that this particular part of the pasuk, and the pasuk is talking about another issue altogether. Nothing to do with the mill. It's talking about other products. In fact, it's difficult to understand, and all the Shem have a hard time understanding. Rabbi Yehuda said so clearly. In his wording, Rabbi Yehuda said at the bottom of the page that the kinefesh chayvus at the top of the page, l'shar dvar madasa. He clearly says his reasoning, nothing to do with lav shebachlolos. So the Rishayim conclude that the kids, the Talmidei Chacham who were asking the question would be presumptuous. They didn't have the patience to hear out the entire thing Rabbi Yehuda said. As soon as he said a few words, the rabbi jumped at it and said, "Oh, Abaye, you guys hold the same." They didn't hear it out to the very end. Abaye who says that you do not get malchus for lav shebechvalos. So how could Rabbi Yehuda says you do get malchus for kiv nefesh chayvul? Anodam for Rabbi Yehuda. Ad kan like Rabbi Yehuda hasamelo the nefesh chayvul yiseidu. Nefesh chayvul it's a teach. The purpose of nefesh chayvul is to add another avera. Could be reino layachbo rechayim berech. We know it's an avera. So what you're saying in nefesh chayvul is an extra avera, and what it is. And once you have an extra Veda, and to teach you other things, we'll say, well, if it's an extra Veda, other things, it's probably extra Veda also for Rechaim and Rechaim Berechim. Even the Yiseidu, Shadya Arechaim Berechim. So we throw it on everything. Aval Hoch over here, when it comes to Tzliyesh, Lav Yiseidu, it's not extra at all. It's not extra. What do you mean it's not extra? What's it coming to teach you? Yes, it is. The Bebele, you know why the Torah says Kim Tzliyesh? Not to tell you to a throwback to Noah Mavushal to add another Aveda. No, we needed to teach you another halach altogether. The mitzvah of eating Korban Pesach is only the night of Pesach. And during that time, you ate it raw, whatever, or cooked in water, you're over. But in the afternoon, at a Pesach in the afternoon, when there's no mitzvah to eat the Korban Pesach, if you ate it then boiled, or you ate it then semi-raw, you won't be over this Aveda. And how do you know that? The key in Tzliyesh is only at the time when you have the mitzvah. When are you even? No, a mavushal only when you have a mitzvah of tzliyesh, which is at night. So it's not extra at all. Therefore, and therefore over here you don't get malchus for tzliyesh. So you get time to learn. That's when you have this aved. And therefore it has nothing to do with the situation of Rabbi Yehuda there, where he says that since it's Rabbi Yehuda who says that since it's actually we already know about Rechaim Berechet. What's its additional lab? The teacher, there's another lab in this whole situation. So it goes across the board on everything. In fact, Tanya Kavashavi, we learned Rabbi Yehuda. We learned Chobal Zug Shel Safarim. If you go ahead and you take a security, a Zug Shel Safarim. Rashi learns it's a barber's scissor. Now this is a very important machlekes between Rashi and some of the other Rishonim. We just said before that this Avera only applies to Eichel Nefesh. Rashi is interpreting that a barber's scissors are considered Eichel Nefesh. Why? Because that's his tools of trade. So Rashi therefore is telling us that Eichel Nefesh doesn't only mean a pot that you cook with, that directly comes in contact with food. even if it's not directly coming counting with food, but this enables you to eat. This gives you your parnasa, your livelihood. So with that money, you can buy food. That is also considered oichel nefesh, and therefore you're not allowed to take that, or you have to give it back to them every time they need it. Zug shos aparim, scissors aparim. But the other Rishonim say no. That you know what oichel nefesh is? Oichel nefesh is only if it's directly related to food. And therefore they interpret zug shel not saporim but misparim, a scissors, and it's used to cut vegetables, or to cut a barbecue chicken. The tzemed shel paras, or the yoke of cows. Now the yoke of cows definitely is not directly dealing with food. It's plowing a field. It's so remote. It's so removed from food. Again, it sounds like Rashi that Rashi's right. But they learned we're talking about these paras are the ones who are threshing the wheat, not the ones who are plowing the field, which are so removed. We're talking about that threshing the wheat in order to enable you to grind it, to eat it. So it directly affects the food. It's a very fundamental argument here between Rashi and other Rishonim, how far we take Oichel Nefesh. But interesting, food itself you're allowed to take. It's only things that enable the person to eat more and more, but food itself you're permitted to take. Anyhow, so about Yechayiv Shtayim. Remember that two parts, or a scissor has two parts. So for each part, even though they work together in unison, it's as if it's two averis. And you learn that out from Rechem and Lechayim. What about Zeh Ba'atzim? You only use one part of the scissor. Then you only want one cow. You only have one. That's one brayse. The Tanya Idol, another brayse, the same thing. You took security, this scissor over some supporters. I would have thought I was not chayv only one. I'm going to tell you, lo yachbel rechayim the rechev. It said you shouldn't be chayv, you shouldn't take security rechayim rechev. And the two, why the Torah say two? Ma rechayim rechev shem yichodim shnei kelim. The two parts of one keli, but the Torah highlights each one. They work together, but it's two different stones altogether. If you only took one, you chai for each one separately. I've called vori, anything else that has two kelim, that are two parts, but they're separate, and you work them together to achieve one end. It's like two avedas. See clearly from here, but there's no third aveda here. There's only two avedas. There is a big question that Mephoshim asked: what kind of malchus is it? It's a lav hanitig la'aseh, because if you took it, you can always give it back. So where does malchus come in here at all? So so some say he's talking about over here in a case where you can no longer return it. For example, you broke the stones, so you can no longer return it. You can no longer fulfill the aseh. That's when you have the law. Might as well just finish the Amud, finish the Perek. Ahugam was a person the chavos sakina dashkafta mechavre. He took security a knife of ashkafta. Ashkafta is like, somebody passes away. And the knife of shchita. He took a knife of shchita from his friend, or the knife that you cut the meat. Again, some would say that a knife of shchita is a bit too far removed from calling it oichel nefesh. Also, the comment Abaye came for Abaye. He said, "Zil ahadri." He said, "Go give it back. Go give it back." In other words, and this is why the Rambam says you don't get malchus, because it's a lav hanitig la'aseh. The aseh is right here. He says, "Go give it back." So we see clearly there's a mitzvah of returning it. So it's a lav hanitig la'aseh. And this is only according to Abaye that says that kol milsadom rachmon le'sav yov mahani. So when you took it, it became yours. So you have a mitzvah giving it back. According to Rava, it never became yours. So there's no mitzvah of giving it back. It's not mine in the first place. So according to Rava, it's not really a lav hanitig la'aseh, because it never became yours that you say, oh, you have a mitzvah of giving it back. See, when you become a gadif, you have a form of acquisition. It became yours. Now you have a mitzvah to give your thing back to him, because it's really that person's thing. Over here, according to Rava, it never became yours in the first place. So it's not a lav hanitig la'aseh according to Rava, according to many. Anyway, to see much further, give it back to him. Why? This knife is important. This is oichel nefesh. The knife for shchita or the knife for cutting up the meat. Says the Gemara, and then the Tokum Medina along. Then take him to the Torah. You claim that he owes you money. Take him to the Torah, and you'll get your money back. And if he denies it, then you swear. Says the Gemara, or whatever the laws are at the time. If you have witnesses, fine. If you have no witnesses and you're claiming he owes you money and he denies it, he swears a shvuas hesses and he walks away. Rabbi says, "Leitzarich make him medina." Allah, you don't have to go to the Torah. Why? Because now that you have the knife in your possession and nobody saw you take the knife, if you're a liar, you have a migui. You could have said the knife is mine. You could have said all along the knife was mine. The fact that you admitted the knife was that other person's, but you took it because that person owed you money, gives some credibility to your claim. The and how much can you claim? Only up to the value of the knife, because that is the basis for your credibility. So the knife is worth $100, even though the loan might be $200, will only believe you as far as the knife is worth $100. Let's say Abaye doesn't agree with this miga that you could have claimed as my own. In fact, how is it any different from the case of how easy with these goats? They ate these what do you call peeled barley in the hedoy, right? The goats from another person walked into this guy's farm and started eating up all his barley with it. The owner of the barley came. He sees the goats. He sees the goats themselves. The Katoin too, and he made his outlandish claim that they ate, thousands of dollars worth of barley. The father Shmuel said that we will believe him. He has a migui. He could have said the goats are mine. And he has a migui. To what extent will we believe him? Up to the value of the goats. Up to the value of goats. So why does Abaye say you have to go to the Torah? Why does Abaye say, well, the knife is by you? We'll believe you that he owes you money. Says the Gemara, Hossam over there, Lav midi the avdi la'oisha legoiru. The very important thing. When it comes to goats, people don't lend out the goats. So therefore, if you're holding on the goats, chances are that you're the owner. So you have a very strong migui. Over here, a knife. People would lend out their knives. So therefore, just because it's by you doesn't in any way prove that it actually belongs to you. If the other person said, I lent it to you. This is something that people generally lend or rent out. So therefore, the fact that it's by you is not sufficient evidence that it belongs to you. So the migui here is very weak. The Shalach Rav Huna bar Ovid. Anything, when you say possession, 9/10 the law. The fact that it's by me proves it's mine. But if these are things that generally it's customarily lent or rented out, he says, it's mine, but I bought it because it's by me. No, you acknowledge it belongs. No, if you say it never belonged to the other person, it's one thing. But you acknowledge it belonged to the other person, and you're saying, but I bought it, ain't an eman. The fact that it's by you doesn't prove anything because that person might have lent it to you. And the Rava, so the Gemara said, no, but Rava less than Haisvara. And Rava doesn't agree with this logic that something that normally lent means no migui. So Haka Rava said, oh, the guy has a knife, he has a migui, he could have said it's mine. But it's a very weak migui. Says the Gemara, Rava himself. There was a case where a person died, left behind his estate to his children. Somebody came along and said, but I lent your father this thing, and it's mine. I want it back. So it says over there that the Rava took away Zugudus Arbala, a scissor that a shearer uses for wool, and you cut wool up. The Safra Dagalata, books of Agadata, Meyasmer from the Yisayimim. And he said to Yisayimim, even though you have it, doesn't prove it's yours. If it's common to lend these things out, we will believe this person is claiming that it's his. Now, Traces and other Shemari say there's no standard rules here. It depends if the person generally is a generous person who lends out their things. It depends if this person has some kind of relationship with this other person. So it's a good chance that he probably lent that person, because if they have no relationship at all, why would you think he lent that person, even if he's generous? So it really, Pesach concludes, every dayan has to sum up the situation, and based on the merits of the case, we'll decide what happened here. Now, Sifra Dagadatuk, in those days, was a Sfarim which was recorded, it's Torah Shabbat. And there's a big argument if those are things that normally lent out. Some said yes, some say no, because they tear very easily and it's very valuable. You wouldn't rent out these kind of Sfarim. But it seems Sifra Dagadatuk, people used to lend out because people didn't read it again and again and again. They read it once and that was it. So they didn't deteriorate and they would lend it out. Amalach Rava says, I'll tell you what. Rava says, you know what, by the knife, I say differently? You know why by the knife I say you have a valid migli? Because people do not lend out knives of shchita. Why not? Even the mifkemer, the knife has to be very, very sharp. The blade has to be sharp. And even if it's a butcher's knife for cutting meat, it also has to be very sharp. And it's very easy to ruin. Even the mifkemer is very easy to cause a defect. Cup the inch. People are very particular about their kitchen knives, and they don't lend it out. So therefore, if it's sitting by this person, he had a good, solid migui. And all of everyone should have a shvuah tov and a good week.